What's up? How y'all doing? It's Jared. It's all Benchmade 63. This will be the same for all 6X Benchmade knives. They're all the exact same, just different blade shapes. I want a 62, right? You see what I just did there? Is just broke that screw loose, so now I've got one. So it's just loose. It's free floating in there. I don't have to worry about it actually spinning when I'm trying to work on it, right? So I'm going to stick that side in. Actually line this side up, just break that one free, same thing, got one side spinning, good to go, right? Not going to worry about the actual pivot as far as two sides here. Take out my little Torx 9. Alright, working on the safe handle. Give a little bit of tension, right? I'm going to squeeze these handles together. That'll let me actually break this screw loose. That's only going to work if it's not running on red Loctite. I've disassembled this thing before. It's running on blue Loctite right now, which is the only reason I'm able to do that. If this is a factory disassembly, if this is the first time you've ever taken this knife apart, like you just bought it off, a different store online, you're probably not going to be able to break this thing free by hand. If they properly set that red Loctite in there, you're not going to be able to break it free by hand. So check out my video on breaking free a I think I did it on the latch. It was a Alpha Beast latch, actually broke that thing free. So I mean, that's it right there. 3 screws. Pop this scale off. Pop the top scale out. Come on, actually come off of there. There's the one side. You can see here that it uses steel washers, which is interesting because it's not going to have the same lubricity as a phosphorus bronze or something, just that's a little bit slicker, but it's going to have the longer lifespan, you know what I mean? The steel itself, the steel washer is going to break down, is going to wear down a lot slower than something like brass. And so having that in the 6X series is, there's definitely benefit to that steel washer. I don't know if I'd always go with the steel washer, but wipe down a little pivot. I like the way that this pivot's made. It's neat. You can see that they just pressed it in there. Pressed it over to actually form that shape. That's really cool. And that's it. That's the safe handle. Do the same process here on the bite handle. Right now I'm going to squeeze. Use my Torx 9. I'm actually going to squeeze it. I'm squeezing the actual blade. This is going to do the same thing as me squeezing the handles together. So you squeeze the blade. That'll put tension on the actual pivot itself, except I want to come in from the other side of the knife, because this side is the actual screw. Pull that screw out. I'm going to stick all my little parts all in alignment so that I don't lose orientation of what goes where. Let's see if I can pull this one out without it spinning. Nope, it's going to spin on me. So switch it up to Torx 7. Repeat this process. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, got both these screws broken loose. So I can just take my Zen pin screw out, which the opposite side is what I would have wanted came out. But whatever, it works. Take that one off, set her down, break it apart. You can see that I still got that Zen pin stuck on there. Set my handle down. I'll pull my blade off, pivot, set everything down. You can see the bottom side of this handle, how this is actually set up. You've got these 2 pins. There's 2 steel pins that actually run through the backspacer there. You can see if I pick this thing up, if I can actually get it to move. Those are sitting in those little holes, right? So you can see the way that that actually holds the orientation of the backspacer itself into place. And then you can see that this is actually a D-shaped pivot. And theoretically, right? Theoretically, that will ride on the interior of this little groove. You can see the way that that's set up. This thing will actually focus in for me. That will run on the inside of that little groove. So if I stick these pins into their little housing, right? Stick those pins down, and that should hold that in place. However, it doesn't. This screw is still just able to free spin, and so that really just kind of works as like a nice orientation spot. It keeps everything in place. And then the actual latch itself is just running on that little sleeve. It's just a little pin running through a sleeve, sets down in there. So that's all you got to do. If you want to take your latch off, disassemble it, pull your latch off. Make sure you don't lose this little pin that's actually holding it together, that's actually running on the interior of the latch there. However, I'm going to set this all back down. Make sure nothing comes apart. I want to keep my latch on. I like the 6X with the latch in place. So what I'm going to do, set that thing well. I'm going to actually stick this back into the latch, make it a little bit easier. Stick it in its little hole. That'll actually hold it in place. Bring up my pivot. Slide my pivot in. So what I'm going to do is make sure everything's aligned, right? I've got the backspacer's in place. It's sitting, those pins are sitting down. That's right where it's supposed to be. The latch is in place. Everything is set up, right? So then I can take my blade and make sure my blade is in the proper orientation, right? So this is the bite handle. I'm working on the bite handle because it's got the latch on it. So I want the actual blade, to be coming into the interior of the bite handle on the side where it's not going to be hitting the backspacer, right? Because if I put this thing on here like that, it's going to come down, hit the backspacer. So you want to make sure your blade is oriented the proper direction on the proper handle, right? As well, make sure you still got your washer sitting in place. Things moving around on me. Set my washer on there. Set my blade on. Next washer, just like building a sandwich. Take my handle here, which still has a Zen pin attached to it. Don't need to take that off. Works. Pull this thing over. Line her up. Squish it all back together. You can hear it snap back into place. Then I'm just going to take my pivot. If I can actually find the right size driver here. Don't need to switch it out right now. Thread in that pivot screw. Just a little bit. Just get it sitting in there. That'll hold everything together. Take your bottom screw. I can actually get this thing to sit in the screw. That's the way I don't know if you can see the way I'm doing this. The way I like to insert screws, I can't see the way I'm doing this, my hand's in the way, right, is I'll hold it on there like that. I insert it into the actual head of the screw itself, hold it on with my finger, and then I'll just guide it down all the way into the actual hole, right? And that way, there's no struggling, you know, you can just kind of put the screw right into the plate, right into where you want it. If I can actually line it up, tighten it down. I'm not going to tighten it all the way down, just finger tight, you know what I mean? Just tight enough, okay? That'll allow me to actually come back in here, screw down this pivot a little bit more, throw in my other Zen pin, or my Zen pin screw. Just snug, not tight, just snug. Same thing with the other side. I'm actually going to leave that just a little bit loose. Tighten down my pivot the rest of the way. So that's the handle back together. I'm going to do the exact same thing with the other side, and I'll come back to you and actually tune it. Yeah, got this thing back together. Everything is sitting, you know, it's not, nothing is tight. It's looser than I would like. Let's see the actual handle play that's in it right now, you know what I mean? So I haven't tightened it all the way up. There is Loctite in the Zen pins and the pivots themselves, right? So once I tune this thing, I'm going to have to let it sit for like 24 hours. But there's a couple things let that Loctite cure. But there's a couple areas of tension actually in this system, right? Because you've got the Zen pins giving tension to the blade as well as the actual pivots giving tension on the blade itself, right? So you don't have a bushing. This is just running on those actual washers themselves. It's a phosphorus bronze setup, except for these are actually steel washers. And so if you over tighten the pivot, it'll clamp onto that blade. It'll stall it out. If you over tighten the Zen pins, it'll clamp onto that blade and actually stall it out, right? And so what I'm going to do is tighten down everything, right? I want to tighten down that pivot screw as tight as it can go. Both pivot screws are as tight as I can get them, right? I'm not going to tighten down everything. Excuse me, I forgot what I was... Yeah, I'm just going to tighten down the actual pivots all the way, right? I'm going to leave the Zen pins out of it. Zen pins aren't tight right now. So I've got handle movement on this handle. Does it stall out anywhere? It does a little bit, so I'm actually going to keep going. A little bit more tension on there, right? Now I'm stalled out. Too tight, right? So I'm going to give just a tiny little bit of movement back off this pivot. If I can get it to break free. Come on. Right there. You see that? Just a little bit of movement. Oh, still stalled up. Do it again. Just that little turn. Now the handle's free. How much movement do I got? It's too much handle play. Still too much handle play. So I'm going to go back. Yeah. Go back a little bit. Try it again. See, yep. Still free floating. It's loose. Better. Almost no handle play, right? So now I'm going to move down to the Zen pin. Actually tighten the Zen pin all the way up. See if I snug that side. Come over here, do the same thing. Actually snug up this Zen pin here. The blade is now stalled out again. You can see it stalling in mid there. In the mid, it's still moving, but it's not moving nearly as freely as it was before. You see that? It sticks. And that's it binding from the Zen pin, because we know we've got tension, we've got proper tension in the pivot, and so that stall, how it's slowing down there, it's not holding it, but still, that's the Zen pin. So now I'm just going to back that off. Tiny bit. Just the same deal. Tiny bit. Move that thing a little bit. Now we've got free movement in the handle. Oh, see? Still too tight. Do it again. Back it off. Just a tiny bit. Yeah. So you've actually still got a little bit of movement, a little bit too tight. I'm going to back off this pivot just a fraction of an inch more. You see that? Barely move that. There we go. There's no lube in it right now is the reason that it's actually still stalling out. But you can see the bite handle still here. Solid, safe handle. Barely any movement in that, right? So if I actually hold this latch down, you can hear the tap now. Because the safe handle's obviously not touching with as tight as it is. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the safe handle here. Back it off. Make sure my Zen pin is loose. I want no tension on the Zen pin. Keep that thing just straight up loose, right? Back off the pivot. See if it moves. Pivot moves. Check my play. It's good, but I'm going to see if I can get it better. Tighten it up just a little bit more. Still too loose. Do it again. There we go. Feels a lot more solid. Basically no handle play in here. Well, for a 6X series anyways. Really minimize that handle play. So now I'm going to come down, tighten up that Zen pin. Do the same thing to the Zen pin. Tighten it all the way up without stripping it out. And it stalls it out. You see that blade? So now I'm just going to loosen it up. Just a fraction of a turn. And I like to stick my thumb on there. You notice me doing that. And that's just kind of it works as like a mental orientation, right? So that I can physically feel the end of the screwdriver turning, right? Because you can see the amount that I'm moving it there. I'm barely moving that screw, and that really will come into play when you're trying to tune a knife like this, right? And so having it sticking up against my thumb, I can actually feel it. I have more of a tactile feedback on the actual movement of the screw itself, and I think that helps. It's one of the reasons that I do that. So back that thing off a little bit. Still too tight. Still too tight. Come back. A little bit less. Right there. Yeah. Alright. Handle's moving good. Once I actually lube it up, it'll do better. Yeah. So got free handles moving. Good tension. Make sure everything's tight. The back screws here are just tight. Tighten these things down as tight as they'll go. Don't worry about it. Back, Loctite them, and then just lock those things down. Those back screws don't even matter. You can see my handle play, which is probably better than it ever comes out of the box. Yeah. Back in action. And floating free. Well, I'm actually going to take a little bit less tension on the bite handle. I think I went a little bit overzealous. A little bit off the bite handle. Same thing with the Zen pin. Loosen that up a little bit. Yeah. Lube it up. This is how I like to lube a Balisong. I over-lube the crap out of it. Don't even move it. Wipe it down. Get all that excess off. Then I'll actually work it in. Yeah. Yeah. 6X series. Definitely nice knives. See the blade centering there? It's a little bit off to the side, but it always was. This side, sitting pretty. Looks good, dead on the sun, dead on the line. Very little tap. It's better than they come out of the box. Yeah, I actually still need to loosen up. If I can find my Torx 9 here. We'll take that pivot down just a little bit more. Edge that thing down. Edge that thing down. Just like that. I mean, it's not even the 16th of a turn, right? And it has a dramatic difference. So tuning a 67 can be a pain, right? It's just back and forth, or 63, excuse me, a 6X is what I meant to say. But that's really the most important part, is actually tuning these things. Because you can just slap the screws in it, but if you get them in the right place and then Loctite it, because I'm going to set this knife down now, and I'm not going to play with that thing. For 24 hours, this knife is off limits, because I'm actually going to tune it up just a little bit more, get it running absolutely perfect, and let it sit there 24 hours. That Loctite will cure, it'll hold it all into place, and so then when I actually pull it out and play with it, it stays where I put it, you know what I mean, and it's got proper tolerances, it still feels good, you can see that there. So, yeah. It's honestly one of the reasons, here's just a little theory for you, it's one of the reasons I truly believe the 6X has this is a heavy knife, right? I mean, I'm never going to try to claim that this knife is just ridiculously heavy as far as Balisong's. Not ridiculously, but I mean, it's freaking a heavy-ass knife, right? But I think it's got a worse reputation than it actually deserves, because Benchmade uses the red Loctite, so few people actually rip these things down and tune them from the factory, and they do such a shitty job actually tuning them at the Benchmade factory that they come out with this crazy handle play. You can take the latch and flip it over the side. I mean, I'm forcing that thing down, and that's as far as it's going to go in either direction, you know. That's what these knives are actually capable of, because they're constructed to the tolerances and they hold the overall tolerances that enable them to be excellent knives. But they come to the point, they come where if you work on it, you void the warranty. They try to prevent you from actually working on it, and then they don't do top-notch work at the factory, which makes the knife never hit its full potential. You never get your full potential out of an 87 that wasn't properly tuned and isn't gonna, you know, somebody's not gonna put in the time to break all that Loctite out of there. It's a ridiculous thing. Yep. 6X. Y'all have a good one.